it's not just about the building of the Freedom Tower, right? It's about the personal stories. So many people came here on this opening day and they relived what they went through here at the Freedom Tower. And in fact, one of our colleagues, Jenise Fernandez, is joining us again because she had the opportunity not only to talk to some of the people who were here today, but to speak to her own family. And Jenise, for you, this was personal.
It was very personal and so fitting that in this exhibit where we can hear these stories, I get to share my family story. Now, growing up, my dad would always point out the Freedom Tower and say, this is where it started for your family. This is where we came to this country and we felt welcomed. And for my family and really all the families, it came down to one thing, and that was searching for freedom.
Like many Cuban exiles, the Freedom Tower holds special meaning for Jorge and Rita Fernandez, or as I call them, Mom and Dad.
The Freedom Tower for all of us is hope, and it's freedom, and it's hope for the future.
Growing up, I heard stories of Cuba and what life was like there. Both my parents were born on the island. My mom is from Holguín, and my dad from a small town called Fomento, where he lived on a farm.
I had never seen a traffic light till I got here. So yeah, it's completely different. No, fortunately when you're a child, you adapt very fast.
When things started to change in Cuba, they had one choice: leave and search for a better life.
And so that created an exodus of political asylum or exiles that otherwise would have never left our country.
My dad arrived on one of the many freedom flights. He already had family members in Miami, but it took 4 years for him and his parents to be approved to leave Cuba.
When we landed at a place that was called the Casa de la Libertad, which means the House of Freedom. And this is when families would reunite. And so I remember looking out the window in the plane, and I could see my family.
Then it was here, at the Freedom Tower, where life would truly restart.
The Cubans call it el refugio, which means a refuge. And basically there you would be, process all the paperwork, you would get some food, mostly we got some cheese, we got some peanut butter, which is kind of an interesting thing because Cubans don't. First experience with peanut butter. Nobody knew what that was.
Like, what is that?
My mom's story was a little different. She actually arrived with my grandma before the freedom flights because my grandpa's life was in danger.
She, in other words, was fleeing also because your grandfather, my father, was a high-ranking officer in Cuba, and they wanted his head. There were no family members at all waiting for her. It was just herself and me as a baby. And I remember her saying, the hardest part for me was there was no Cuban coffee anywhere, anywhere.
The Freedom Tower wasn't even used as a processing center just yet, but a few years later, it became a frequent place that she and her family visited, looking for jobs on the bulletin board and receiving assistance in whichever way they could.
I remember the stairs going down the basement. I remember the columns. I remember the checkered floor. I remember the box with the cheese.
Do you remember how it tasted?
Very good.
Really?
I mean, at that point, you would take what they give you and you eat it and you like it and you love it and you just do it.
My family's story is by no means unique, but it's a part of my story. Stories my family has been adamant about passing down, making sure I understood exactly what it took to be here today.
Did you ever ask my grandparents, obviously Tata Chang, people, Maman, how hard they felt it was, or do you think they kind of put on brave faces?
They left their homes, they left everything, their possessions, their jewelry, everything, to come with nothing, and they had to build.
The history now on full display, something my parents believe is necessary to learn about what makes the Freedom Tower so distinct, but also what helped build Miami into the thriving multicultural city it is today.
People have to learn about their origins, and it's important to know history. So when you learn history, you learn from past mistakes.
learning about my origins, but also understanding what it means to be an American, specifically an American born to Cuban exiles.
In America, if you have a dream, you're willing to work hard. It's certainly, there is the opportunity for prosper. And that's what Freedom Tower was. We felt welcome, we felt wanted, and we have to be thankful.
And it's this tower, standing tall in downtown, that symbolizes new beginnings, leading the way to a better life.
You know, you said, which I love, that the Freedom Tower represents hope, but as we're talking, I think it also, for me, represents bravery.
It's the Ellis Island of the South.
No,
That's what it was.
It really is.
The light.
Well, now I see where you get your work ethic and your love of cheese.
The love of cheese, right? Now it all makes sense.
That was really beautiful.
It was. And obviously I've heard the stories growing up, but when you're sitting there at that capacity, the cameras are on, and I really got to sit down, it was so interesting to see how my parents told their story. It wasn't just kind of telling us, and as kids, you know, you're thinking, okay, mom, dad, whatever, but really taking the time to listen. It just reminds me so much of how brave my family is, which I said in that piece. Of course, this represents freedom, but this really represents bravery for not just my family, but for all the exiles who came.
Well, your mom used the word hope. And even after leaving, you said they knew they probably weren't coming back. How do you still have hope in all of that?
I know, and it's amazing. I think about that so often because also thinking about they didn't speak the language. They had to start from scratch. My grandmother was a teacher in Cuba. Here she was a seamstress. My grandpa was an officer. Here he had to drive buses. It was so much going on. And you just think, how did you have hope in all of that? And what they say is it really came down to believing in the American dream and believing this was the land of opportunity. And they proved it, like so many did. They proved that with hard work and with determination, you could really accomplish anything.
Jenise, thank you for sharing your story.